Your washing machine is the dirtiest appliance in your house, and I'd bet money you've never cleaned it once. Not really cleaned it. You've wiped the front, maybe pulled out the lint tray if you even have one, but inside that drum, behind the rubber seal, down in the detergent drawer, there's a layer of grime building up right now that's going to end up on your clothes. I've pulled machines apart that looked spotless from the outside and found mold colonies the size of your palm hiding in the folds. Today, I'm going to show you exactly what's happening in there, why it happens, and how to actually fix it, not just mask the smell for a week. Here's the problem most people don't see coming. You do a load of laundry, the machine finishes, and you pull your clothes out fast because you're in a hurry. Work, kids, dinner, whatever. You slam the door shut. Maybe you close the detergent drawer too. That machine now sits closed, wet, and dark for the next 24 hours minimum. Sometimes it sits like that for 3 or 4 days if laundry day is only once a week in your house. That's not a washing machine anymore. That's a sealed, damp box sitting at room temperature, and that is exactly the environment mold and bacteria are built to thrive in. The smell is usually the first sign, but by the time you smell it, the problem has already been building for weeks, sometimes months. People notice a musty odor coming off towels that were supposedly just washed, or they notice their whites aren't actually coming out white anymore. They've got this grayish tint to them. Some people notice their machine smells fine right after a wash, but the smell comes back within an hour of the door being shut. All of that is the same root problem, just showing up in different ways. And the reason nobody catches it early is because the parts that get dirtiest are the parts you never look at directly. The underside of the rubber gasket on a front loader, the back wall of the drum, the pipe that feeds the detergent drawer into the tub. You'd have to actually get a flashlight and physically look for this stuff to catch it early. And nobody does that until there's already a smell forcing their hand. I've had customers describe it to me almost the exact same way, over and over in different words. They'll say the towels come out of the dryer smelling fine, but the second they sit in a drawer overnight, that sour smell creeps back in. Or they'll say they can smell it the moment they open the front door of the house before they've even gotten to the laundry room. That's not their imagination, and it's not a coincidence. That's a machine that's actively growing something inside it, strong enough that the smell is traveling through the house every time that door gets opened for a new load. I've worked on machines in basements, in tiny apartment closets stacked next to the dryer, in garages where the machine sits 3 feet from a workbench covered in sawdust. Doesn't matter the setting, doesn't matter the brand, the pattern is always the same. A machine that gets used regularly but never gets maintained ends up in worse shape than a machine that barely gets used at all, and that surprises people every time I say it. It's not about how often you wash clothes, it's about what happens to the machine in between washes. I want to walk you through why this happens, because once you understand the mechanics of it, the fix makes a lot more sense, and you'll actually stick with it instead of doing it once and forgetting about it. Modern washing machines, especially front loaders, are designed to be water efficient. That's a good thing for your water bill, but it's a bad thing for keeping the machine itself clean. Older top loaders used to fill the drum almost completely with water and just blast everything with a huge volume, which had a side benefit of flushing residue out with every cycle. Newer machines use a fraction of that water and rely on tumbling action and pressure instead of pure volume. Less water moving through means less water rinsing away detergent residue, fabric softener residue, and the tiny bits of lint, skin cells, and body oil that come off your clothes during a wash. All of that has to go somewhere, and a lot of it just doesn't fully leave the machine. It settles. Detergent itself is a big part of this, and this is the part almost nobody thinks about. Most people use way more detergent than the machine actually needs, especially with high-efficiency machines and concentrated detergent formulas. You think more soap means cleaner clothes. It actually means more soap residue that the low water cycle can't fully rinse away. That residue sits in the drum, sits in the folds of the rubber gasket, sits in the detergent drawer and the little channel that feeds from the drawer into the tub. Over time, it turns into a sticky film. That film is food. Mold spores are in the air everywhere, all the time. You can't avoid them. They're just floating around your house right now. When they land on a damp surface that's got a film of organic residue on it, and that surface sits in the dark with the door shut, you've basically built them a house with a full pantry. Fabric softener makes this worse in a specific way I've seen over and over on service calls. Fabric softener works by coating fibers with a waxy, oily layer to make them feel soft. That's fine for your towels, but that same waxy residue coats the inside of your machine too, especially the dispenser tray and the hose feeding out of it. That waxy film doesn't rinse away easily with cold or warm water, and it becomes the sticky trap that catches lint and grime every single cycle after that. I've taken apart softener drawers that had built up so thick it looked like candle wax had been poured in and hardened. And then there's the door seal on front loaders, which honestly causes more service calls than anything else I deal with. That rubber gasket has folds specifically designed to cushion the door and create a watertight seal. Those folds are also perfect pockets for water to collect after every wash. Most people never check underneath that fold because it's not visible unless you physically pull the rubber back with your fingers. Water sits in there, it never fully evaporates because the door is shut, and mold sets up shop right along that seal. That's almost always where the worst smell is coming from, even when people swear they've cleaned the whole machine. Top loaders aren't off the hook here either, even though they don't have that rubber gasket problem. Older, agitator-style top loaders have a central post in the middle of the drum, and underneath the cap on top of that post is another spot that almost nobody ever checks. Water and detergent residue drip down into that cavity every single wash and just sit there, hidden under a plastic cap, completely out of sight. Newer high-efficiency top loaders without an agitator have their own version of this problem. Around the lip where the inner drum meets the outer tub, there's a gap you can actually see if you look closely with a flashlight while the drum is empty, and that gap collects the exact same kind of film and residue as a front loader's gasket does. I bring this up because a lot of people assume top loaders are immune to this whole issue since they don't have a sealed door. They're not immune. They're just dirty in a different spot. Hard water plays a role too, and if you live somewhere with hard water, you'll notice this problem shows up faster and worse than it does for someone on soft water. Hard water carries dissolved calcium and magnesium. Every time water heats up during a wash cycle, some of those minerals come out of solution and deposit themselves on whatever surface they're touching. The heating element, if your machine has one, the inside of the drum, the rubber gasket. That mineral layer isn't just cosmetic. It's rough at a microscopic level, and a rough surface gives mold and bacteria something to group onto that a smooth surface wouldn't. A machine sitting on hard water without regular descaling builds up buildup on top of buildup, and that compounds the smell problem twice as fast as the same machine would on soft water. So now let's talk about what people try to do about this, because I see the same mistakes over and over on service calls, and understanding why they fail will save you time. The first mistake is running a hot wash with bleach and calling it done. Bleach kills surface mold on contact, sure, but it does nothing for the residue underneath. The soap film, the fabric softener wax, the mineral deposits from hard water. You're sanitizing the surface of a dirty layer instead of actually removing the dirty layer. The smell comes back within a couple weeks because the mold has something to regrow on. I've also seen people mix bleach with vinegar thinking they're doubling up the cleaning power, and that's actually dangerous. It creates chlorine gas, and that's not a small thing. That's a real health hazard in an enclosed laundry room. The second mistake is leaving the door open between washes without doing anything else. This is actually good advice as a habit, and I'll get to that later, but people treat it like it's the entire solution. Leaving the door open lets the drum air out, which helps prevent new growth, but it does nothing about buildup that's already there. If there's already a film of residue and mold sitting behind the gasket or in the drawer, air alone isn't going to remove it. You need actual mechanical or chemical cleaning to get rid of what's already built up, and then the open door habit keeps it from coming back. The third mistake, and this one drives me crazy, is people scrubbing the visible parts of the rubber gasket with a cloth and thinking they got it all. They wipe the front-facing fold, it looks clean, they close the door satisfied, but they never pulled the rubber back to check underneath. That's like mopping only the middle of a floor and ignoring the corners. The corners are where everything actually collects. I've had customers tell me they clean their gasket every week and still have a mold smell. And the first thing I do is pull that rubber back with my fingers and show them the black buildup hiding right there. Every single time, they're shocked. There's a fourth one I see a lot too, and it's less about a cleaning method and more about a shortcut people take that backfires. Scented booster beads or heavy perfume detergents get used specifically to mask a smell that's already starting to show up. Someone notices their laundry smells a little off, and instead of tracking down the source, they just buy a stronger smelling product to cover it. That's masking a symptom, not treating a cause. And it actually makes the eventual cleanup harder, because now you're dealing with mold and mildew buildup with a heavy layer of fragrance and wax from booster beads sitting on top of it. I've opened up drawers on machines like this and found a sticky, perfumed sludge that took twice as long to break down as a normal buildup would, simply because the fragrance additives in a lot of those products aren't water-soluble the same way regular detergent is. And a fifth mistake worth mentioning, because I get asked about this constantly, is people assuming a new machine doesn't need any of this yet. I understand the logic. It's brand new, it hasn't had time to build anything up. But I've serviced machines less than a year old with a noticeable gasket smell already forming, especially in households doing 4 or 5 loads a week with a full detergent scoop every time. Buildup doesn't care how old the machine is. It cares about moisture, residue, and time sitting closed up in the dark. A brand new machine used carelessly will develop this problem faster than an older machine that's been properly maintained the whole time. Now, let's get into the actual method, because there's a right order to do this in, and skipping steps or doing them out of order is why a lot of DIY cleanings don't fully work. Before you touch anything, unplug the machine, or at minimum, make sure it's not mid-cycle. You'd be surprised how many people start pulling drawers and gaskets apart while the machine is still powered on and connected to water, and that's just asking for a mess, or worse. Start with the detergent drawer. Pull it all the way out. Most machines have a little tab or button you press to release it fully. Check your manual if you're not sure, but almost every drawer comes out completely rather than just sliding part way. Once it's out, you're going to see channels and compartments with buildup that ranges from a light film to, if it's been a while, actual solid gunk. Soak that drawer in hot water with a bit of dish soap for about 15 minutes. Dish soap is better than laundry detergent here because it's designed to cut grease and waxy residue, which is exactly what fabric softener buildup is. After it's soaked, use an old toothbrush to get into every corner and channel. Don't rush this part. The corners are where the worst of it hides, and a toothbrush is small enough to actually get in there, unlike a sponge or cloth. While that drawer is soaking, move to the cavity where the drawer sits. Get a flashlight and actually look inside that empty slot. You'll usually see grime along the top and sides, sometimes even a bit of mold if it's been neglected for a long time. Use the same toothbrush or a bottle brush, if you've got one, to scrub that cavity out. This is a spot almost nobody touches because you literally cannot see it unless the drawer is removed and you're looking with a light. I've found this cavity to be moldy on machines that otherwise looked pristine simply because it's completely hidden during normal use. If you're working on a top loader with an agitator, this is the point where you'd pop the cap off the top of the center post I mentioned earlier. Most of these caps just pry off with a flathead screwdriver, or in some models, they unscrew counterclockwise. Underneath, you'll almost always find a ring of grime and standing residue, sometimes even a bit of black mold, depending on how long it's been. Clean that cavity the same way you clean the detergent drawer cavity. Hot water, dish soap, and a toothbrush or bottle brush working into every angle. Dry it out fully with a cloth before snapping the cap back on, because sealing moisture back into that cavity just restarts the whole cycle. Next is the door seal, and this is the step people always skip, and it's the one that matters most for actually killing the smell long term. Pull that rubber gasket back with your fingers, working your way all the way around the circle. You will find water pooling, black specks, sometimes a slimy film depending on how long it's been. Use a cloth soaked in a mixture of equal parts white vinegar and warm water and physically wipe out every section of that fold, all the way around. For stubborn spots, spray straight vinegar directly onto the mold and let it sit for about 15 minutes. Vinegar's acidity breaks down mold at a level plain water and soap can't touch. If you're dealing with heavy black mold that's been there a while, a diluted bleach solution works better than vinegar for that specific spot, but never mix the two, and make sure you rinse it well afterward with a clean, damp cloth so no residue is left sitting against the rubber. Now for the drum itself, which is where a monthly deep clean cycle comes in. Most machines built in the last decade have a dedicated cycle for this, sometimes labeled clean, tub clean, or self-clean. If yours has it, that's the one to use. Run it empty, no clothes, and instead of using a commercial cleaning tablet, which honestly work fine, but you're paying a premium for citric acid and baking soda that you probably already have, use 2 cups of white vinegar poured directly into the drum and run the hottest cycle available. Vinegar breaks down mineral buildup from hard water and cuts through soap films sitting on the drum walls and the paddles inside. If your water is particularly hard, meaning you get a lot of white scale buildup around your faucets, add a half cup of baking soda directly into the drum along with the vinegar. Baking soda is mildly abrasive and works as a deodorizer, and combined with the acid from vinegar, it helps break loose any calcified residue sitting in the drum. If your machine doesn't have a dedicated clean cycle, run the longest, hottest regular cycle it has empty with the same vinegar and baking soda combination. It won't be quite as thorough as a dedicated clean cycle, which usually runs longer and at a higher temperature specifically to combat buildup, but it'll get you most of the way there. For a top loader, especially an older agitator model, fill the drum with the hottest water setting available, add the vinegar and baking soda the same way, and let it sit and agitate for a few minutes before pausing the cycle entirely for about 30 minutes. That soak time matters more on a top loader than a front loader because the water sits at a higher volume and stays in contact with the drum walls longer, giving the vinegar more time to actually break down mineral scale and soap film before the machine drains and spins it away. After the soak, let the cycle finish out normally. I want to stop here for a second because there's a detail people always get wrong on this step, and it's the difference between a deep clean that actually works and one that just moves the grime around. Don't add regular detergent to this cleaning cycle. I see people add a splash of detergent along with the vinegar thinking they're boosting the cleaning power, and all that does is reintroduce the exact soap residue you're trying to strip out. Vinegar and baking soda on their own, in hot water, at a low pH imbalance against each other, do the actual work here. Detergent has no business being in that cycle at all. Here's a pro tip that I picked up from my grandfather, who serviced machines back when top loaders were the only option, and it still applies today. After that vinegar cycle finishes, don't just walk away. Open the door and manually wipe down the entire inside of the drum with a dry microfiber cloth while it's still slightly warm and damp from the cycle. The heat from the hot wash loosens residue that a rinse alone doesn't fully carry away, and wiping it manually while warm picks up film that would otherwise just resettle once the drum dries. It takes maybe 2 extra minutes, and it makes a noticeable difference, especially the first time you deep clean a machine that's been neglected for a while. For the exterior, don't ignore it because grime builds up around the control panel and door frame too, especially anywhere your hands touch with wet or soapy fingers. A simple all-purpose cleaner and a cloth handles this, but pay specific attention to the crease where the door frame meets the front panel. That's another spot where moisture collects and gets ignored. Now, once you've done this full deep clean, the real question is how you keep it from building back up, because a one-time clean on a machine that's been neglected for years is going to need repeating sooner than a machine that gets proper maintenance. This is the habit change that actually matters more than any single cleaning session. First, leave the door cracked open after every wash. Not slammed shut, not fully open where it's a tripping hazard, just cracked enough to let air circulate through the drum. This alone cuts down dramatically on new mold growth because you're removing the dark, sealed, damp environment that mold needs. I tell customers to treat it the same as leaving a dishwasher door cracked. It feels unnatural at first, then it becomes automatic. Second, pull your clothes out promptly. I get that life gets busy, but letting wet laundry sit in a closed drum for hours is one of the biggest contributors to both machine odor and musty-smelling clothes. If you can't get to the laundry right when the cycle ends, at minimum, crack the door open so the drum starts airing out even before you've unloaded it. Third, cut back on your detergent. Check the actual line markings on your detergent cap or the drawer itself. Most people eyeball a pour that's double or triple what's actually needed. High-efficiency detergent is concentrated, specifically because these low-water machines can't rinse away excess. Using less isn't just about saving money on detergent, it directly reduces the residue buildup that feeds mold and clogs the drawer and drum over time. Fourth, wipe down the gasket dry after wash days when you have a minute, especially if you tend to run several loads in a row. It doesn't need to be a deep clean every time, just a quick pass with a dry cloth along that rubber fold to remove standing water before it has a chance to sit for a day or two. And fifth, run that vinegar deep clean cycle monthly if you use your machine daily, or every 6 to 8 weeks if it's more occasional use, like a couple loads a week. Consistency is what actually prevents the buildup from getting to the point where you're dealing with visible mold and a smell that won't quit. Sixth, pay attention to what you're loading into the machine and how much of it at once. Overloading seems harmless, but it does real damage over time, both to the machine's mechanics and to how well it manages to clean itself. When a drum is packed too tight, water and detergent can't circulate around every piece of fabric, which means more residue stays trapped in the clothes and gets redistributed onto other items and onto the drum during the tumble. A drum that's never more than about 3/4 full gives the water and detergent room to actually move, which means less residue left behind when the cycle ends. I know it's tempting to cram in one more towel to save yourself a load, but that habit compounds into more frequent deep cleans down the road, and it's harder on the motor and bearings too. Seventh, and this one's small, but it adds up over months, wipe down the outer rim of the drum opening every so often, not just the gasket fold itself. On front loaders, there's a metal or plastic rim right where the door meets the drum, and detergent splashes and drips collect there just like everywhere else. It's an easy spot to hit with the same damp cloth you're already using on the gasket, so there's no real reason to skip it once you're back there anyway. One more thing worth mentioning, and this surprises people every time I bring it up on a job. Check your washing machine hoses periodically too, both the inlet hoses bringing water in and the drain hose taking water out. These aren't something you clean the same way as the drum, but they're worth a visual inspection every few months for cracking, bulging, or leaks, especially if your machine is more than 5 years old. A failing hose isn't a cleaning issue, it's a flooding issue, and I've been called out to more than one water damage job that started with a hose nobody had looked at in years. While you're back there checking, it's also a good moment to make sure the machine isn't pushed flush against the wall with zero airflow, because good ventilation around the unit helps everything dry out faster between uses, which circles right back to reducing that damp environment mold needs. A gap of even 2 or 3 inches behind the machine makes a real difference in how quickly the whole unit dries out after a wash, and it's a 5-minute check the next time you're doing laundry anyway. I want to come back to something I mentioned earlier about the smell coming back within an hour of shutting the door, because that specific detail tells you something important. If you've done a full deep clean, drawer, cavity, gasket, drum cycle, drain filter, and the smell still comes back that fast, it usually means there's a spot you missed, most commonly either underneath the gasket fold at the very bottom near the drain area, or inside the drain filter itself if your machine has one. Most front loaders have a small access panel near the bottom front of the machine with a drain filter behind it. That filter catches lint, coins, buttons, all kinds of debris, and it's rarely, if ever, cleaned by the average homeowner. It can hold standing water and trapped debris that rots and smells exactly like the mold problem you were trying to fix. Open that panel and be ready with a shallow pan, because there's usually a cup or two of water that drains out when you open it. Pull the filter, rinse it under hot water, clear out any debris caught in the housing behind it, and put it back. This is genuinely one of the most overlooked spots on the entire machine, and I've solved persistent odor complaints more than once just by cleaning that one filter after a customer swore they'd already cleaned everything else. Let's also talk timing for a second, because people ask me how long this whole process takes and whether it's worth doing regularly. The full deep clean, drawer, cavity, gasket, drum cycle, drain filter takes about 45 to an hour the first time, mostly because you're dealing with buildup that's had months or years to accumulate. Once you're doing it as regular maintenance rather than a rescue mission, it drops down to about 15 to 20 minutes total, because you're not scrubbing hardened residue anymore, you're just doing light upkeep on a machine that's already mostly clean. That's the real payoff of staying consistent with it. The job gets faster and easier every time you do it, instead of harder, like it does when you let it go for months. Think of it the same way you'd think of sweeping a floor daily versus scraping caked-on grime off it once a year. Same floor, same amount of dirt over time, completely different amount of effort depending on when you actually deal with it. I'll leave you with one last thing that ties this whole video together, because I think it's the mindset shift that actually matters here. People treat their washing machine like it's a self-cleaning appliance because, ironically, its entire job is to clean things. But the machine that removes dirt from your clothes is not removing dirt from itself in the process. If anything, it's collecting a portion of everything that comes off your laundry, cycle after cycle, load after load. Every single appliance that deals with water, heat, and organic residue needs its own regular maintenance schedule, the same way your car needs an oil change, even though its whole job is to run smoothly on its own without you thinking about it. Treat your washing machine the same way, and you'll never deal with that musty smell creeping back into your clean laundry again. I've been doing this kind of work long enough to know that most maintenance problems in a house aren't caused by a lack of effort. They're caused by a lack of visibility. You can't fix what you can't see, and the worst spots in a washing machine are, by design, tucked out of view, under a rubber fold, behind a drawer, inside a cavity with a cap over it. Once you know where to look, the actual cleaning takes almost no time at all. The hard part was never the scrubbing. The hard part was knowing exactly where to point the flashlight in the first place. If this helped you out, go ahead and subscribe, because I've got a lot more of these breakdowns coming, where I walk through exactly what's happening inside your appliances and how to actually fix it instead of just masking the problem. Drop a comment and tell me what's driving you crazy in your house right now. Dishwasher smell, dryer not drying like it used to, whatever it is, I read every comment, and a lot of future videos come straight from what you guys are dealing with. And if your dryer's been taking 2 cycles to actually dry a load lately, go check out my video on dryer vent cleaning right after this one, because that problem and this one usually show up in the same house around the same time, and the fix is just as overlooked as this one was.